Many of us have fond memories with Turok Evolution. Yet, at the same time, many of us are quite disappointed with this game. I personally liked this game quite a lot when I was a kid, but at the same time, kids are really bad at judging a good game, and this game did come out 20 years ago. As a kid, everything is novel and new, so of course the game seems like the best thing you've ever played. But at the same time, maybe the game was just good and your memories are true. So that's what I'm going to ask today. Is Turok Evolution overhated, or did it age well? How good is Turok Evolution 20 years later? Hey, Jarek here, and before I get on with this video, I need to introduce an old friend, a sponsor that I first accepted years ago and I'm still using their browser, Opera GX, except they want me to show you something new they just added recently, GX Profiles. Now, if you don't know what Opera GX is, it is the browser made for the gaming demographic. They have the GX corner, which shows you all the sales across every different platform, across every different store. They have my personal favorite, the Twitch integration, which makes it very easy to see when your friends are streaming so you can get distracted and stop working. Another favorite is Forced Dark Pages, because if you use light mode, I am convinced you are an alien in a human suit. So what is GX Profiles? Well, effectively, you're able to set any settings you want in your browser and swap between them on the fly. For example, say you do a lot of streaming, but there's stuff you don't want to show your viewers, or maybe you don't want to get banned off of Twitch. Well, you can create a profile for streaming. Perhaps your computer is a little outdated. Well, you can create a profile called Potato that will limit the amount of resources that your browser uses. Creating a new profile is pretty easy. Go to your browser settings, manage GX Profiles, create profile, change these settings to whatever you want, add new profile, and hey, there you go. Down there on your taskbar is your new profile. So yeah, if you want to try out Opera GX for yourself, it is free. Check that link down below in the video information or in the pinned comment. If you're on mobile, that's probably easier. Of course, a huge thanks goes to Opera GX. I always appreciate them reaching out for a sponsor because it is a product I actually use. And with that said, let's go back to Turok Evolution. Everyone seems to have a different memory of Turok Evolution. Hell, you may recognize this game without ever having played it. That's because, for whatever reason, a lot of Chinese import shops have just taken the box cover and plastered it on posters and different things you can buy. Here's footage of my roommate buying one of these posters at a local mall. This is not even close to the first time I've seen this art put on a poster. Like, for some reason, it's just everywhere. Okay, so I have fond memories with Turok Evolution, but at the same time, I understand why a lot of people didn't like it. Acclaim was going under at the time, and Turok Evolution was a very rushed game as a result. On top of that, Turok Evolution is just kind of a different game from the earlier Turok games. This game is extremely linear, and Turok was not really known for being a linear game. So you have a game that's less polished than the previous games, and different from the previous games, so of course opinions are going to be rather mixed. My personal opinion is that I'm not really against linear games. If anything, I prefer them. I mean, hell, I'm wearing a Half-Life shirt right now. This is kind of like my preferred way to play. But I get it, I understand it. Especially with the lack of polish, which is very obvious, especially if any cutscene shows up.
They're dead. They're all dead. We should have known they would find us. Should never have opposed Tyrannus.
That dinosaur is just chilling.
Show us mercy now. No mercy.
This lack of polish became even more apparent when you look at the different versions that were released. The worst of the worst is the PC version. Digital Foundry actually posted a video very recently about this. This came out a year after the initial launch and only released in Europe. At this point, Acclaim was going under and there was no saving them, and this port is probably one of the worst things they released. There are so many graphical things that just got busted in this version. But even if people cared about this game enough to mod it to add those things back in, that doesn't fix the mouse aim, which is also awful. In fact, it's so bad that I opted to emulate this game instead of play the PC version. I'm actively choosing to use a controller and emulate a console game because the PC version is that bad. Oh, and yeah, I tried the mouse injector, but it doesn't work with this game, so you're stuck with a controller if you're emulating it. The worst console version has to be the PS2 version. It is missing quite a bit of content and again has quite a bit of graphical options toned down, mostly because the PS2 was pretty outdated by this time. The best two versions by far are the GameCube and Xbox versions. And here you actually have a choice. On GameCube, the textures and audio are pretty compressed, visibly and audibly so. It's also missing a bit of lighting. Xbox, graphically by far, is the best version, however there's a catch. The Xbox version runs at 30 FPS and quite frequently dips down to 20, whereas the GameCube runs at 60 FPS. for that reason alone, I am emulating the GameCube version here. There's also not a widescreen option for this game, and I am using the widescreen hack, so you're going to be seeing things randomly pop in and out of the side of the screen, but I'll actively choose this widescreen hack over running with 4:3. I know that choice may drive a few people crazy, especially if you played it back in the day, but I mean, I played it back in the day, and I'm going to actively choose widescreen over 4:3, even if it comes with some downsides. So yeah, final conclusion when it comes to the ports, either choose GameCube or Xbox. Xbox is probably the easiest one to play as it is backwards compatible on the Xbox 360, or you can emulate it like I did, which I would argue is the best way to play. I prefer frame rate over 30 to 20 FPS. Just whatever you do, stay away from the PC version. It is so bad. Again, this game was being made while Acclaim was going under, so it was being thrown through development hell. I could make a whole video on this alone, but other people already have, so I'll just direct you to them instead. This video will be mostly talking about the actual experience playing the game. So let's talk about that. I will very briefly touch on the story, and since I hadn't played this game in 20 years, I remembered none of it. And I'm still kind of confused. It seems like your main character was just kind of plucked out of nowhere and pulled over here to be the guy that fixes things. Like it's your fate to solve all problems. I don't really know. I'm going to be honest, I don't really care. To me, Turok is just kind of that excuse to go fight dinosaurs. I know some people really do care about the lore of Turok, but I don't care enough to dig into it and do research on it, so let's talk about the things I actually do care about, the gameplay and graphics. Oh, also, why don't we have more dinosaur games? And I don't mean survival games, I don't want to play Ark, there's a million of those games, I don't care. I want more dinosaur first-person shooters, they just kind of disappeared. Compound Fracture looks awesome, and I'm super excited for that, but like, I want more dinosaurs, damn it. Or a Far Cry Dinosaur Edition. I'm still upset we didn't get Far Cry Dinosaurs and instead we got Far Cry Primal. I know it wouldn't make sense given the history and they were trying to make Far Cry Primal more realistic for like caveman times or whatever, but they also made Blood Dragon, so who cares? Anyway, the graphics. For 2002, and given the circumstance, to be honest, this game doesn't look half bad. Well, some of the time. When it comes to the jungle levels, I think these actually hold up quite well. They aren't necessarily groundbreaking when it comes to console graphics for the time, but they do have good presentation. Or at least the presentation was strong enough for me to have a very, very vivid memory of these exact moments. Walking into this big waterfall area with dinosaurs everywhere and that rainbow up there. Like, these levels just stick into my head. I remember them so well. But then there are the gray and brown corridor levels, and these just don't look good, and they just continue on forever. Then there are the flying levels, which I don't even remember how they looked because nobody wanted to play these. They were just annoying. I was way too busy focusing on how much I didn't want to play this rather than actually focusing on the game itself. That said, I will give them credit for some of the worlds they created. This city specifically kind of reminded me a lot of Halo 2 New Mombasa. And this was 2 years before Halo 2 came out. If you can say anything, it's that Turok creates interesting worlds. So yeah, graphically it's not groundbreaking, but definitely not bad, unless you're playing on PC. Or PS2. So now I can talk about the part that I actually want to talk about, the gameplay. As I briefly mentioned, you can kind of summarize Turok into 3 different sections: jungle, brown and gray corridors, and flying. Let's start with jungle. I would argue that these jungle levels are some of the best levels in the entire Turok franchise. They are genuinely good, even 20 years later. And while this game is linear, these jungle levels tend to be more interesting than just walking down hallways. They're usually quite vertical and loop in on themselves. These are also the levels where you'll usually see the most amount of enemy variety. You'll see raptors big and small. You'll see angry monkeys for some reason. Oh hey look, the Loch Ness Monster is real. Okay, in all reality, how did they get in this tiny lake? These things would not survive here. Also, they're very aggressive, so be afraid of this lake. Then of course you're going to have enemies that will shoot back at you. In this case, lots of lizard men, and even they aren't just the same enemy over and over again. You'll see a wide variety of them that would take too much time to explain every single version. Basically, you'll see a different type of lizard man from all ranges of all different health variants. So yeah, it's obvious where most of their focus went when it comes to this game. It was the jungle levels. And these levels are the levels that are the closest to the previous Turok games. But then you get into these gray and brown hallway levels, and man, these things just continue on and on for way too long. They're not particularly interesting, they don't really have any gimmicks, usually they don't anyway. They're mostly just a constant barrage of walking into a room and then way too many enemies spawn so the fight lasts for longer than it should. Then you walk into the next room, the same thing happens, rinse and repeat. All of these levels kind of feel like filler, and this game is way too long as a result. In fact, every single level feels like it lasts for 40 minutes to an hour longer than it should. They're not too difficult or even necessarily bad, they're just not interesting. They're painfully mediocre. And then we get into the flying levels, and I don't know a single person who likes these. To be honest, again, these aren't necessarily bad. They're not good, but they're not bad. The main problem is that plenty of other games have done this and done this way better. The gimmick of flying on a pterodactyl shooting enemies is admittingly pretty cool, but that alone is not going to carry these levels. At the end of the day, when people buy Turok, they're wanting to play Turok. They're not wanting to play Dinosaur Star Fox. Now, I remember these levels being really difficult, but going back to them today, they're not as difficult as I remember. It's probably just because I was a kid and not as good at video games as I am now. But I can see why I struggled, because sometimes they feel like bullshit. That'll bump. Oh, it's not health. That's. Oh, well, wow. They just melted me. God damn it. And then they flew into the rock wall. Oh, also, Turok doesn't have any checkpoints, so if you die, you're doing the whole level over again. And that's really annoying when you die like this.
Over here. Follow me into this pipe.
Oh, is it gonna... Mother... That's so f***ing stupid. Holy shit. Yeah, these are not good levels. They're really annoying. And again, I repeat, I don't think I've talked to anyone that's liked these. Now, I'm sure those people exist, but they're a very small minority if they do. I also had a unique problem with these levels because I was playing with my Xbox Elite V2, which has paddles on the back. And I was able to rebind my buttons any way I wanted to in Dolphin. And I tried to set it up like Bumper Jumper in Halo, where I jump with the left bumper, but that also meant my controls for flying got a little messed up, because you can't change them separately, they're the same controls. So if I wanted to turn right, I had to push one of the left bumpers, and if I wanted to turn left, I had to push the right bumper, and man, that messed with my head. Even so, the controls aren't as bad as I remembered. I do wish they were dual stick, they're not. You control everything with just the left analog stick, which... why? Even with that, I mean, it was mostly fine. It probably would have been harder with the GameCube controller because the GameCube controller is not really good for stuff like this. I eventually did find out that the easiest way to beat these levels is just to go as fast as possible and not even bother shooting at the enemies and just get through them, which is extra good because no one wants to play these, so get them out of the way. But enough negativity, let's talk about something good. The weapons. Every once in a while, I'll hear someone say that they're disappointed by the weapons of Turok Evolution because they're not as good as the first games. I don't know what they're talking about. These weapons are awesome. Even basic weapons, like say the pistol, is pretty unique. Its standard function is what you would expect a semi-automatic pistol, but its split function turns it into a literal sniper rifle. While in concept this isn't anything special, you could argue the Halo CE Magnum does the same thing. I mostly like it because of the animation of pulling out that scope and longer barrel. In all reality, you're probably not going to snipe with this thing because the bow is just a better sniper. Speaking of the bow, this thing is really fun. It has a scope, so standard bolts are great for taking headshots at range. You have explosive bolts, which will be useful throughout the entire game, and you have the thing that sticks in your brain more than anything else in this entire game, the poison arrows. I don't know what it is, but I have very, very vivid memories of a specific situation, in a specific moment, a specific location in this game, where I was watching my brother shoot one of those lizard men up on top of a hill. Is probably one of the first levels, and seeing that lizard man puke his brains out. And I'm not alone. Like, so many people in my Twitch chat were saying that they remember this poison arrows and that they were awesome, and I don't know what it is about these specifically that do that to your mind. Next up is the flechette gun, which counts as a suppressed weapon, so it won't alert enemies, but its split function turns it into a minigun that has 15 barrels. I cannot imagine how much recoil this thing would actually have in real life. Either way, I don't care, that's awesome. You have the dark matter cube, which acts like a black hole grenade. Ow! You have the rocket launcher, which its default state fires 5 rockets at once, and as if that couldn't be overpowered enough, you eventually get an upgrade called the Swarm Bore. Now, a lot of people are disappointed that the Cerebral Bore wasn't in Turok Evolution, but this is why, and I would argue that this is way cooler than that. And as if that wasn't overpowered enough, you can launch a literal nuke. Holy shit. This is the best rocket launcher out of any game I've ever played. God damn. I'll stop there with the weapons. I could be here all day if I wanted to talk about every single one of them. It really makes me miss this time of early to mid 2000s where weapons were just this unique. This also lets me go over to the gore in this game. There is a lot of it. You already saw it in the Swarm Boar, but you're constantly going to be taking out limbs, taking out heads. Every single time you shoot them, there's big jibs coming out. It just feels very satisfying. That's even with the controls being a little bit difficult to aim. I've definitely heard people over the years say that the controls in this game are really bad, but they're fine. Controller support is definitely pretty old school in this game. It doesn't have your typical aim assist where your aim will kind of stick to an enemy. Instead, it just has really egregious bullet magnetism for most guns. Not all. The shotgun can be kind of difficult to shoot enemies with, but usually you can kind of shoot near enemies and it still hits them anyway. It's kind of like Serious Sam. You can turn this off in the menu if you want to, but I would recommend leaving it on. So yeah, that's Turok Evolution 20 years later. How good does it hold up? Well, it really depends. But I definitely think that Turok Evolution is a bit overhated. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand it. It definitely is a little rushed at times, and it's not quite like the Turok games that came before it, but it's not bad. Again, I'd argue the jungle levels are some of the best in the entire franchise. But then this game also has those filler levels where you're just fighting the same enemies over and over again down the same brown and gray hallways over and over again. And then it also has those god-awful flying levels that nobody wants. Man, this game really has the full spectrum of good and bad. I oftentimes find that the people that really like this game only played the first couple of levels and the multiplayer, and then didn't beat the game, thus they think the game is really good. If you play the whole game, it kind of drags on for way too long, and well, it's pretty mediocre. But that's where it lands. It's mediocre. It's not bad. It's just fine. It's aggressively okay. The multiplayer was good though. I'm not gonna fully go into that because, well, it's difficult to play the multiplayer in 2022. But I remember playing it a lot with my older brother. We specifically went to this level on the treetops where if you fell down, you would get attacked by dinosaurs. And most of the time we didn't even play multiplayer. We were kind of just playing pseudo horde mode before horde mode even existed. Yeah, it was really fun. I don't know, I liked it. So my final opinion is that if I ignore the nostalgia, if I get rid of that out of my mind, Turok Evolution is an okay game. And it's definitely not bad, it's definitely not great, it's not as good as Turok 1 and 2 objectively, I would argue. But on a more subjective level, it is my favorite Turok game. I tend to like linear games, so this game worked fine, mainly for those jungle levels. And that should be it. I want to give a big thanks to everyone that joined me over on Twitch. My Twitch is twitch.tv/Jarek4GamingDragon. If you subscribe to my Twitch, you can see my videos at minimum 1 week ahead of time. Sometimes I can't stop working and I make like 4 videos and then I'm like a month ahead of schedule, so you can really see videos early if you subscribe over there. Huge thanks goes to AuberGX for sponsoring this video. Check down below for a free download to AuberGX. And of course, thank all of you for watching this video.